140 pound bright white cold press, which is what we order here. So a few of us in the board talked together and we decided to go ahead and get some. So we have, I think I ordered 100 sheets. So we do have plenty of arches, 140 pound. From last year, we have left over some arches, 140 pound rough for only $6, and hot press, which is very smooth, for only $6. Once those are gone, those prices go with them. So if we order them again, they'll be up to $9 as well. Right now we have 300 pound left over from a couple years ago, and that's still running $12. Once that is gone, so is that price. And I don't remember what the new 300 pound price is, but it's up there.
Close to 15.
Close to 15, I believe you. Okay, because that happened, and just to be kinder to my students, I did some research and we decided to try Kilimanjaro, 140 pound, 100% cotton rag. So it's made of the same components as the Good Arches paper. And it was on sale for $5 a sheet. So I bought like 50 sheets, and my students and I have been experimenting with it since last spring. And I like it. It is not as sturdy, in my mind, as arches. It's not as thick and hearty, you know what I mean? So like if you do a lot of lifting or scraping, the paper filaments will come up quicker than they would on a piece of arches. So it's just not, maybe the binding, whatever they use to bind the cotton fiber with, isn't as wonderful as arches, but for those of you who just want to paint really nice paintings and don't do a lot of lifting and scrubbing, the Kilimanjaro is working really well. So I bought, I think, another 100 of those, I believe. So we have Kilimanjaro 140 pound, bright white, cold pressed, and we have for $5 a sheet, don't all run at once, and we have arches 140 pound, okay. And you can see what else is back there. Sue Dewey, our treasurer, has very kindly offered to sell for me tonight since I'm up here doing this for y'all. So, and Sue, do you want to sell during the break and after, or just during the break, or? Try to get it during the break so she can clean up when we're done here. Okay, all right, so that's the story on the paper.
And just one more note, in case you hadn't noticed, our spring workshop is going to be Mary White. If you're a portrait painter, you probably know who she is. She's quite spectacular portrait painter. But look her up and see she's going to be doing a, 3 days?
There's
2 days with her and 1 day where you can stay and come down to paint with the group with models. It's going to be using models. All right? Okay, Mike, our man with the demos in his pocket. I don't know where
Well, it's interesting to me when I look at the members of this organization and what just incredible talent there is. And so I've been able to get people to do demonstrations in other parts of the world. So last year we had a guy from England who did a demo. He stayed up very late, but he was very good. People from California or other parts of the country. And the real advantage to that is the real advantage to Zoom, because they couldn't come here. We don't pay transportation. Glenn Blue came to do. I want to say a word about Glenn Blue. I got him to do a demo for us last year, I think, maybe a year ago, and it was a Zoom demo. He wanted to know would we fly him up from New York City, and I said no. We don't do that. If you want to drive, we'll pay for transportation costs, but we don't fly people. Sorry. But his work was so good that he's been brought back to do a workshop. It'll be by Zoom, but he's a terrific painter. So just to kind of reiterate what Ann was saying, I think he will be a wonderful workshop guy. I talked a little bit earlier with Sheila. We had dinner. If any of you know a restaurant in this area, please let me know, because we have always gone to Lockman's, which is just up the street here, and they have closed permanently. I was astounded because their website says we're open.
Yeah, well, take the time to get those down.
I guess so. Just pull the plug. Anyway, so Sheila brought somebody with her, a significant other, to sort of back her up, her mom, Madeline, who's helping put things together. And we'll support her. Anyway, I was reading again through Sheila's resume, which is on our website. And I said to her when we were having dinner, it's interesting that I can speak for myself and apparently for her, and probably for most of you. You start out when you're in school, you think, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that. And then you start to do that, and suddenly you're there. And someplace else, you're over there. And life doesn't seem to keep straight lines. And that's true with this very talented lady here. She has worked in all kinds of places, a medical office, a high school English teacher, just among other things. So tonight, it's a real pleasure to have somebody that's this gifted from among our membership, because there won't be a lot of in-person demonstrations, and that required somebody who was local. And so she's going to do this tremendous piece of local work. Okay?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I got to know a lot about Mike also at dinner that I never knew, so, check with me later. He has just as interesting of a past as I do. And is very... Okay, so raise your hand if you've never met me. So less than half of you. Okay, so I'm going to talk to... Well, I'll talk to all of you, but I know so many of you that it feels funny. You know what I mean? It feels like you're teaching your peers and your superiors. There's some superior artists in this group. Seriously. So I am very honored and excited to present to you today for the second time in my 12 years as part of NFWS. So, welcome. Let's see. My name is Sheila Reigh, and I'm 27, and I live in Tonawanda. But I've lived in Western New York. You can do the math later. And I have been teaching watercolor. Actually, I started with Partners in Art. I started with colored pencil, and I loved it, and I loved the blending, and it's funny how similar colored pencil is to watercolor. For those of you who have ever done it, you can blend, and it can be real see-through and kind of transparent looking until you load the color on. And then I moved to, that was with Sean Daly, for any of you who know Sean Patrick Daly. And then I moved on to I moved on to charcoal with Joan Horn at Partners in Art, and learned how to really, really, really draw from a setup. And then I moved on to pastel with Joan Horn. And then I began, as we had these Partners in Art shows, I began to notice this watercolor thing, which I had never dabbled in before. And I loved it. People like, those of you who know Jane Stoddard, she was one of my, like, whoa, I want to know how to do that. And Jody Zeem and others. So my mom and I took a class, a 10-week class with Gail Billy back in the day. Some of you are peers of Gail Billy, and that's it. I was hooked. And then I studied also with Jody Zeem. So I was at Partners in Art for probably 5 or 6 years with different people learning different media. And me being, I also was teaching calligraphy for 10 years at Michael's craft store at the time. And so this just kind of fell right in. And anyway, that's just a very long story short. That's how I got into watercolor, and I started teaching it because everything I learn, I feel like, I guess my gift is teaching, because I feel like I put it into sequence and order, and then I like to share it with people. Oh boy. It's like a billboard picture up there. Okay, so I've been teaching at the Tonawanda Senior Center for 18 years. And we're having a ball. So I have some veterans there in this room that have been with me for most of those years. And so we've been having a ball, and a whole bunch of new students. I have 35 students right now between intermediate watercolor, advanced watercolor, and we're going to start intro to calligraphy tomorrow. So anyway, I love it. I cannot believe how blessed I am to be able to do this. And for those of you who don't know, I do professional face painting on the side most weekends and carnivals and parties and so on, which is 80% of my annual income. Crazy. I never would have dreamed that I would ever be so blessed to do something so fun with kids. So I've got big kids and little kids. Okay.
So we're all gonna line up after the demo.
Okay, I didn't bring my face paint, but I could make do. Just don't cry or it runs off. Okay, all right. So I thought what attracts me to paint something is usually color and contrast. I love bright contrast, light lights and dark darks. So those usually attract my attention. And my favorite colors are the jewel colors, the cooler jewel colors, like blues and purples and greens and turquoise and maroons. And so you'll see when on the break, you can kind of scan some of my artwork over on that side over there. I think that's where it is, over on that side. And you'll see I probably picked mostly those colors to work in. I love every subject. I like doing, buildings and nature and animals and florals and just everything. We've tried, in my classes, we try to do wood and stone and water and clouds and just everything, so everybody gets a taste of everything. And as I'm teaching that, I'm learning. So, I know you guys know that you just learn until your last brush stroke. You just keep learning. All right. So I've chosen this rose, and how many of you ever painted a rose? Yeah, it's kind of a favorite, right? I mean, you got to paint a rose at one time in your life. And so I hope this isn't too redundant for some of you veterans out there, but I wanted to tell you about some things I've learned since I did paint my very first rose. One thing I've learned about, especially in nature, but in most everything, is that rarely do I ever use just one color to cover a certain surface. You know what I mean? Rarely is a pink rose petal just pink. Right? It's got maroons in it, or a little bit of yellowy orange or peachiness in it, or a leaf. Rarely is it solid green. It usually has yellows or blues or different shades of green, different tones of green. So I'm always looking for those. In my mind's eye, when I started painting, I take off all the darks in my mind's eye, and I try to see what is underneath, what lies beneath, if that helps you remember it. What lies beneath. So if you can you see this well enough that you can see, first of all, I use the PBO blue masking fluid just because I like the fact that you can actually see it because the Winsor Newton masking fluid is so so very light cream, it's hard to see sometimes on my paper. So these little bits of turquoisey blue are masking fluid. I didn't mask very much of this. By the way, when I went to print out this photo, I didn't realize that my printer was running out of ink. See it? Okay. So it actually didn't put in all the darks that were in the photo, and then so I changed my ink and I printed it again, and this is what I got. Plus I cropped it a little closer. But I love having these two because I can see the glow of things in this lighter picture, and but I love the richer bluer greens in here. So I'm kind of might use both of these to work through this painting a little bit. Okay. So what I did just a couple nights ago is, in my mind's eye, peeled off the dark pinks and the dark purples and whatever I saw in there, and asked myself, what do I see underneath? There are a few places in here where they look downright orange. And when you're just starting out, you think, okay, I'm going to pull out my Winsor orange and I'm going to paint that little piece orange. But when you really look at it and you realize this is a peachy flower, you begin to realize, wait a minute, that's not really, it's not like God made that piece of rose orange. It's that it's yellow underneath, and when you add the pink, it looks orange because of that transparency of watercolor. So I like to layer colors like that. So I have already put down orange I have already put down Hansa Yellow Light. Okay, that's one of my favorite bright lemony colors. And I've put that down where I see that yellow glow coming from underneath the pinkiness of the rose. Okay? All right, so please feel free to interrupt me or answer questions. Just no hackling or heckling. Okay. Going in. Oh, I have another treat for you today. I'm going to teach you, in case you don't know, in case you've never done this, I'm going to teach you how to make a raindrop or a dewdrop on a rose or a leaf or a petal or anything that looks like you can pick it up and it'll drip off the page. It looks that 3D, okay, and it's easy. All right, so first I'm going to paint one or two of these petals and then let it dry. And then I'm going to, before I finish the rest, before I keep going on, I'm going to start the first step of the raindrop, the dewdrop, because it takes some time. You have to put a puddle of water and let it dry a little bit, okay? So I'll let you know when that's happening. Okay, going in. Usually I paint light to dark. Put these on because they're the fashion statement of the year. And I'm going to pick a petal, any petal. What I have on my brush right now is Opera Rose. I have wet my, by the way, most of these are Winsor Newton. I do have a couple Da Vinci, I have a few Daniel Smith, a couple of Core, Q-O-R, and maybe a Holbein. But in general, I use the Winsor Newton. Okay. I'll start with this one. All right, there's always, I'm going to kind of do this like I'm teaching you, like I'm teaching my class. So this one petal I'm going to start with is kind of big, because my students always ask me, or I always ask my students, should I paint this on wet paper or dry paper? 95% of the time, it's wet. The answer is wet paper, because it's watercolor. We want the paint to hit that wet paper and spread into the water. We want the water to help do the work. Plus, that's what makes it look painterly. Otherwise, you might as well paint with acrylics, right? if you want to spread it across the sheet. Okay, so I'm going to wet that one. I'm going to wet this one too. Why am I not going to wet two petals right next to each other? It'll bleed very good. Can't help it. I'm a teacher. I'm going to be asking you questions. You better be right there with the answers. Okay. So these two petals have, I'm going to do this petal and this petal. Two of the petals that do have a dewdrop on them. By the way, I've drawn the dewdrops in this time, but I don't always. You can put them in as an afterthought because they go in at the very end. They go on at the very end after your petal or your leaf is completely dry.
Sheila, how did you get the rose drawn on? Did you freehand draw?
No, because I didn't have time. I cheated, I traced it. My process usually is, unless I really want to draw it freehand. So I print one of these off my computer, then I print a black and white. Then I sit down watching the news in my recliner, and this goes on my light box, and a piece of white copy paper goes on top of my white light box. And so I've got light coming through here. Can you see that? And I use a Sharpie and I trace what I need. And then if I want to blow it up, I go to FedEx office and I push 127%. And this makes it a quarter sheet, from an 8 by 10 to a quarter sheet. Okay? And then I put this on my light box and my watercolor paper on my light box the next night for news, and I trace it. Okay, unless I want to draw it out. Yes, okay. Good question. Because I teach 2 classes of watercolor a week, plus face painting, plus calligraphy or drawing, I don't have time to sit and draw these out. Okay. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Okay. So I'm just going to re-wet these because I'm yakking and they're drying. I thought of doing a portrait of my newest kitten, who's now 1 year old. But I figured getting him done, or even close to done, in an hour and 50 minutes is not going to happen. So I thought I'd do this. Y'all are so quiet. Okay. So both of these petals have kind of a fade. They have dark areas and light areas, but no hard lines. So I'm going to start here. And somebody's like, wow, she finally put her brush on the paper. I know, I've sat in those chairs for 12 years now. I get it. Okay. And I'm going to just touch it around here. Boy, I tell you, I'm harping on myself and my students the last few years. Save the whites. Save the whites. Save more white than you think. It's so easy to lose your whites. Okay, I'm going to grab another. Okay, well, I think I can talk and paint at the same time. Better, because that's what I do when I'm teaching. So a lot of times people will ask, what brushes do you like? And I used to use decent brushes that I could get at Michael's when I first started. I'm also using some Gravity, putting a little more yellow in here. And then one of my students came back from Florida or somewhere and said, you got to see these brushes that her Florida teacher was using. And they were first made by Lowe & Cornell, and they were called Ultra Round. They're still round brushes, but they have this amazingly pointy point but they still hold a lot of paint and water. Lowe and Cornell, one of those gentlemen, retired. Okay.
Vacuum.
It's a vacuum. One of them retired, so Lowe and Cornell no longer exist. And one of the guys, I can't remember which one retired and which one stayed on, but he created his own company called King Art, one word. Capital K-I-N-G, capital A-R-T, but one word. And so he continued making these same brushes, producing them. So they're called King Art Original Gold Max Round. You can still get regular rounds from them by King Art, but these Max rounds are just awesome. So when you need a really big brush, but you have to go around these little nooks and crannies, these are great. Okay.
They have great sales too.
Do you have great sales?
Yes,
Okay.
and sets, the whole thing, yes.
Where do you get them from? Because I got them from like,
From King Art.
right from King Art. Oh, okay.
So it's a site, you can look.
Okay. Because I found these on Cheap Joe's, but I know they have them elsewhere too.
And when you buy something, they send you a little gift.
Oh, nice. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, most of my students have, I wouldn't say converted over to the Max Round brushes, but they've definitely added to their supplies. Okay, I'm not going to touch that one too much more here. I want to get this one done because I definitely want to show you how to do the dewdrop. Thank you. The dewdrops or the raindrops. If you are planning to put a raindrop or dewdrop on your flower, you do not have to plan ahead. You don't even have to use masking fluid for the highlight. You can, but this is another way to do it. Now, there's even a little bit darker pink on this edge. So far I only have the opera rose out, and now I'm gonna get my permanent rose out. Because I want to darken this just a little in here. I'm putting wet, juicy paint on, and the water is helping it flow. And I'm going to use some gravity. So when you study with Joan Horn, if anyone has, at Partners in Art, you learn realistic drawing, like pick it off the page realistic. So I was a perfectionist, realism, and then I went to watercolor. You should see my very first watercolors are so meticulous in every little thing, and I've had to learn to loosen up quite a bit, but it's fun. So now here's where I'm gonna kind of combine these in a sense that I want the glow from that one, but I want some deep, rich contrast up in here. Okay, just a tiny bit there. Here's the thing, when I put my brush, when I load my brush with wet juicy paint, when I put it down, usually, not in every circumstance, but in probably 85% of the circumstances, I want to see that paint hit the paper and flow. I don't want it to just sit static, unless I need to be careful because, you know, I'm doing a detailed eye or something like that. I'm learning to let water do the work. Can anybody say amen to that? Okay. You know what else? I'm gonna leave that one alone. No, I'll do it real quick. All right. So this one has a little more yellow on it, so I'm gonna come in with some more yellow. And then I'm gonna do a leaf as well. And then after I do get to show you how to do the dewdrop later, I will see how much of these petals I can get distinct from each other. Okay, that's a little much. Whoopsie. Don't dab your paper with the quilted picker up, you'll get quilting on your paper. So always use a Kleenex or Viva, because Viva doesn't have a print, a pattern on it. Okay, going in. I'm gonna put a little pink on here. Fun fact about opera rose or permanent rose. What color does red turn? Windsor red, straight up Windsor red, or cadmium red for those of you who use a different brand. What color does red turn when the sun hits it? Anybody? Orangey, right? Usually orangey. It just gets, you can almost see the yellowness in the red. Or sometimes even pinkish, right? When red gets light, it can look pink. Does that make sense? So just saying, this is something I've done more and more often lately, is before I put my reds down, excuse me, whether it be a Windsor red or a alizarin crimson, I often will put rose underneath it, especially the aqua rose, because it's so brilliant and it adds a brilliance to your reds underneath. So like I said, I'm constantly looking for what lies beneath, because I think it makes your colors much more brilliant. I'm almost done with this petal, believe it or not. It doesn't need much paint. It's pretty white. And I have to wait till that dries to put the shadow on. Everybody know what a thirsty brush is? You clean your brush off, you squeeze the heck out of it so it's a thirsty sponge, and then you can lift if you don't want the paint to go where it went. Okay, 2 petals, almost done. This has it's a little too wet, so I'm going to hold off on that. Come back in a minute. Or just dab it and then come back right now. This has a little fold or wrinkle in it. All right, let's do a leaf. Okay, I have yellow on most of my leaves because what makes green? What are the 3 primaries? Red, yellow, blue. Very good. And what makes green? Blue and yellow. Good. Okay, so there is yellow in all greens. So again, if you want your green to be a little bit more vibrant, put some yellow under it. I've noticed that some watercolorists that I've seen here to demo, and even some of my past teachers or workshop people or whatever, a lot of them don't really buy many greens. They make their own greens with their blues and yellows, and I say more power to you. And of course, there are some beautiful, beautiful greens you can get with all kinds of blues and yellows. I do keep phthalo green. I like Winsor Newton. I like Winsor Green Blue Shade, which is really a jadey color. It's hardly realistic, you know, I mean, unless you're in the Bermuda Ocean. If you've ever been there, the water's this color and it's like, it can't be real. It's got to be a chlorinated pool in there, but it's the ocean. This color just doesn't appear naturally very much, but I use this as a basis for all my dark greens. I also keep permanent sap green in here because I find it's pretty dang close to a true springy grass green. And I can alter it with yellow, I can alter it with blue, I can turn it into olive with burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is another one of my best friends. Burnt sienna with check out this difference here. This is phthalo green or Winsor Green Blue Shade. with burnt sienna in it. Look at that. That's gorgeous. It's gorgeous forest green. The more burnt sienna I put in there, the more dark olive it becomes. So instead of your friends talking you into buying undersea green, a whole nother tube, you can just make your own. But how many of you bought way too many tubes when you were starting out? And you just bought every color that every artist used up here, right? Okay. You're not raising your hand, but I know it's true. Okay, so I'm getting my dark green ready, going in. These are very warm green. These are very cool green. And somewhere in the middle of these two photos is the real thing. This is what you get from a printer that was being ornery. So I think I'm going to start with a little bit of sap first. Okay, I'm going in. It's almost like, okay, now some of you can you see the little dewdrops on my leaf? Okay, so some of you are panicking. You're not leaving the white, you're not leaving the white, you're losing the white highlight. Trust me. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any news? Anybody pregnant?
Not in this time.
I ask my senior citizens that all the time. And now I are one. I'm finally old enough to join the senior center. What?
Are you painting on dry paper now, Sheila?
Yeah, but I kind of like wet the leaf with my sap green, very watery sap green. But yes, thank you for pointing that out. Okay. I'm gonna do, and you can see there's a really nice highlight on this leaf. But it's not white. It's like light mint green. So again, I'm going to create a clean, thirsty brush. Okay, and I've got to remember to start my dewdrop because it's a few steps, and one of the steps takes some time to dry. Okay, so I'm wiping out. I try not to use very much masking fluid unless I really have a white object that is smack in the middle of a large, darker color. Otherwise, I just, if it's small enough, I just try to work around it and be cognizant of it when I get close to it. And be careful not to lose it. Okay, going in with my darker now. Stages of paper wetness. There's dry as a bone, stage 0. There's wet as can be when you first put the water on and it's sitting on top in a puddle and it's super glossy. I call it glossy. Stage 2 to me is when the water soaks in and it becomes kind of glistening like satin. You know what I mean? When you go to buy paint at the store, you can get glossy, semi-gloss, satin, eggshell, matte. Okay. So, yeah, let me test this color here. Ooh, yeah, that's nice and rich. It's a little blue though. That's a little too blue. Okay, so I'm going to pick up little bit of sap green to warm that up. That's better. Okay, going in. This leaf has a really hefty shadow on it from the other from the rose petal above it, or the leaf above it, I can't tell which. I think it's from the leaf above it because it's got a serrated edge just like this leaf does. Okay, I'm going to take some value off of that, lighten that up a bit, and come in here. The stem is actually slightly lighter, and the veins are lighter than the leaf. Okay, this is my loaded brush with paint, and if I keep rinsing this out, I'm just wasting paint. So I have what I call a tweaky brush. It can be any size 2 or smaller, and I'm usually ready with my tweaky brush to come in here and soften an edge. Everybody know what soften an edge means? I think most of you do. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in here today. A little bit.
Always remind us.
But
Always remind us.
it's good to always be reminded, right? That's what I tell my seniors at the senior center. So I'm painting water right next to the paint I just painted, but I'm making sure my brush kisses up to the paint I just put on, so it forces that paint to soften. Okay. I'm just going to throw some of that in, and I'm pretty sure it was Margaret Martin, for those of you who knew Margaret Martin, one of our local watercolor celebrities, who's no longer with us. I think she was the one who told me, don't go more than ½ an inch without changing color or value. You ever heard that? I love that. Don't go more than ½ an inch, or if you're doing a huge picture, an inch, without changing color or value. So you don't get those just solid masses of green, or you know what I mean, or just unchanging. Watercolor it's such a treat to see the colors blend and mold with each other that you might as well take advantage of it. Okay. All right, I want to, let me get more green on here. This leaf actually gets cut off. It'll get cut off by the mat, so I'm not really worrying about what happens at the base here. I'm going to do one more. Okay, sap green. Sap green as a base. And I also have some yellow down here just to warm it up a little. When you think about it, when these leaves were growing, they really were a very light yellowy green to start with, right? Before they get their true deep green chlorophyll as they grow and mature. So it's pretty much yellow under most green of leaves. This is just an underpainting, so I can put it on somewhat solid. Those Scottish dancers never gave up over COVID, did they?
They love it.
They love it. Okay, let that dry mat. Okay. You know what I'm gonna do? For the sake of this special little mini lesson on dewdrops, I'm gonna use this because it's dry. Okay. Remember when I first showed you what the phthalo green looks like all by itself? Okay, right out of the tube. It's kind of a unrealistic jade green. Okay, watch this. Let's say this is part of a leaf, and I'm going to try to make this as big as I can so you can see way back there. Hi, Ron. Okay, so you can use a pencil to actually lightly draw the shape of your raindrop. It could be round and it could be oval. Usually those are the two colors. Once in a while you'll get an elongated one where your camera caught two drops meshing together by capillary action. Somebody in my class was like, yeah, that's capillary action. I remember that from 7th grade biology. Okay then. Okay, so I'm going to, that means water likes to join close by water. That's what that means. Water follows water. Water joins with water. I'm going to try to make this big enough for you to see it. So this is dry as a bone. I'm going to come in here with clean water. I've just made an oval, which I don't know if you can see. And I'm going to fill this oval with enough water that it's almost puddly. It's almost a puddle. Can I raise your hand if you've had this lesson, if you know what I'm going to do? So I thought this was new, right? Ron, do you remember this from years ago? No, it's the senior center, so you can watch it again, and like my mom watches movies again, and she enjoys it just like she did the first time because she doesn't remember anything. It's okay, we have the kind of relationship where we tease each other about that. Okay, so can you see that that's wet now? That's just plain water. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Now what you do in that little puddle of water, that's clean water, you take the same color that you were painting with for your leaf. So I'm going to come in here and grab some phthalo green, otherwise, or Windsor green blue shade. And I'm going to paint. I'm going to put some paint, a good amount. It would help if I could paint inside the lines. Okay, so I'm painting this oval with the same color. And you all know that watercolor is additive. So when I put the same amount of medium value phthalo green paint on here, it doubles the value, it doubles the darkness of it. Okay, now look what I'm doing. You see how I'm letting gravity help me here. So I am gonna, that's why you need enough water to make almost a puddle. Because when you add I'm gonna add just a little more paint so this is even more stunning so you can see it better. Because we like stunning. Sue's over there laughing at me. Okay. All right, so do you see how you get like a fade from gravity? Okay, so this is the part that takes so long to dry. So I need to set this upright, or I'm sorry, at a slant. I need to slant this enough somewhere where not so much that that puddle of green runs off the oval, but so that it dries that way. So it's lighter at this end, darker at this end. Got it? Okay. All right. Oh, let me just, the light, I'm going to draw a sun. The light is coming from this side. Okay? And you'll see that in a few minutes. So I'm going to put this over here and balance it somewhere. not gonna work, maybe right here. There we go. To keep that puddle at the base so that it can, it's actually the top, but it's upside down. So I'm gonna let that dry just like that while I paint. Okay, anyways, going in. You know what, I can go ahead, I might as well do that with the paint too. Okay, here we go. I drew a circle here, almost an oval, before I even started painting because I did want to plan where to put them this time. So I'm putting, well, it's relatively clean water. It's a bit green, but that's okay. It's mostly clear. And I can, once that petal is done, and your petal or your leaf or whatever needs to be completely done, you have to be happy with it before you put this on. Because once you put this water droplet, dewdrop, whatever you want to call them, raindrop, once you put it on, you don't want to paint over it all because you'll lose the beautiful highlight that you're going to have in a little bit here and the nice shadow you've got going. So I can actually do 3 of these at once, and I can load it with, I'm going to load those puddly circles. These are a little too wet, so hang on, I don't want it to drip. Okay, and I'm going to put some of my hot pink, my opera rose.
So if the light is on the petal coming from a certain angle, how does that correspond with the light and the darkness of your dewdrop?
Okay, good question. So the light in this picture is coming from it's going from here. So it's coming kind of from the lower left. Okay, that's just how it is. It's coming from the lower, and you can tell that because this side's lit up, this side is shadowed. I'm sorry, upper left, because you can see that these petals are making shadows on these petals. So the light's coming from up here. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know it sounds reverse, but so the light's coming from up here to the left, my left. Is it your left as well, or are you having a mirror image?
All right.
You're having a backwards image, so you're right. Okay. So I want my puddle of darker paint to be at the lit end. I know that sounds backwards, but you'll see that that's the anatomy. You know how water reverses things? Did you ever, how many of you have ever painted a stem going into a clear glass vase of water, and the refraction, the stem, once it hits the water, it moves over, it refracts, the light reflects in the water. I guess it's maybe this similar principle that it happens with this too. Okay, so this will be good because you're going to get a bunch of examples here. In a little bit. And I brought you all a present. I brought you a worksheet that actually tells you the instructions of how to do this. You get to take it home. I'm Oprah. You all get one.
After you do raindrops on roses, do you do whiskers on kittens?
Yeah, see, that was my other choice. Whiskers on kittens. That was my, maybe, you know, if you guys don't run me out of here and Mike deems to have me back another year, I'll paint my kitten for you. Well, he'll be a year old by then, but. We have an orange and white kitten who's just turned a year old, and he's smaller than usual. I think that's just how he'll be. He's orange and white, cutest face ever, and I'm a cat person. This is seriously cutest face ever. His name's Tango, which is short for tangerine, but we never call him Tango. We call him Biscuit, Puffalump, Pop-Tart, Muffin Top,
Squirt face.
Squirt face. I mean, he's such a little peanut. He's such a little muffin. He gets called. He's got a mind of his own.
Yeah.
But boy, does he love his belly and his back scratched. He'll lay there for half an hour and let you do that. This is too cute. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of hold that up a little while I'm painting other things. It'll be worth the wait. All right. Another thing my students ask me a lot is, how do you know which brush to use? How do you know which brush to reach for? And I basically tell them I use the biggest brush that will fit the area without me making a mistake. In other words, get some paint on there, you know. Don't grab a tiny brush and be all meticulous and everything, because then you're not letting the water do the work again. And I need to wet first. Okay, let's do another petal. Let's do this one over here, because it's got some beautiful, gotta make sure I got the correct petal here. What is that? Okay. Oh dear, that's green.
Do you need your water changed?
I think I have enough, I just didn't really rinse this brush well. So let me see. Let's try that again. Where was I?
The dab green.
Brother. Okay, here we go. That's cleaner. Yeah, green and pink don't mix well. What color do green and pink make? Mud. Or gray, yes. Grayish brown. Okay, I'm going in here. This is such a pretty petal. So, you know, I say I'm trying to get looser in my old age, in my watercolor. But when you're doing a flower like this, a rose with petals that are each kind of unique, and you don't really want them blending into each other, you want to see the overlaps and the folds and the different petals just, you know, sprouting out from each other. You almost have to do it petal by petal. I did a grouping of 3 hydrangeas. Are the hydrangeas the one that the bees love? No, what's the ones that the bees love?
You mean where the ants crawl up?
Yeah, the ants. I'm sorry, the ants. Peonies, thank you. I did some peonies. You'll see back there when we take a little break. Is it time for a break yet? Ooh, almost. Okay. And again, it's like I didn't know how to do that without, I mean, I could put down kind of a wash of light pinks and yellows, but when you get to each petal, you almost have to do each petal. And I find that you almost have to do, you know, you have to do every other one. You have to alternate because you don't want them running into each other either. Okay. I have a few of my students here tonight. I think I saw 4 of my students. And they're like, Sheila, stop talking and just paint. Now that one has some beautiful purpley blue, like almost, what's that color? Okay, so I have to make a decision between cerulean blue or cobalt violet, or even a really light cobalt blue. Because there's a beautiful, I think I'm going to go really light cobalt. Let me see. So this is where, When your relatives think they're doing you a favor by buying you a Strathmore pad of watercolor paper, or Canson, or Artist Loft from Michael's brand, and they think they're doing you a great big favor buying you watercolor paper, and it's like cardboard and it feels like wood, just save it for testing colors. If you're gonna test a technique, use the good stuff. But if you're just gonna test colors, use the not so good stuff. I'll be diplomatic, the not so good stuff. Okay, yeah, I think that's gonna work. I'm gonna drop in some cobalt blue. 'Cause blue and pink make lavender, right? I was gonna use cerulean because it's a real nice turquoisey light robin egg blue, but it's also very opaque. Did you notice that about cerulean? It's kind of milky. So I didn't want a really opaque color for that. Okay, that's looking good. I gotta keep this tilted. Let me see how this is doing. Okay, this is a great time to take a break. Although there's no snacks. Where's the snacks? I'm gonna call Sue Walker and yell at her. Where's the snacks? They won't let us have them? Okay, really, because of COVID? Really? Okay. Feel free to come up and ask me questions. Take like a 5 to 10 minute break. You can buy paper from Sue, watercolor paper. I also have a bunch of paintings over there, some framed, some not. Okay, ready? So actually, Steve, he's my new friend, Steve Sidari, just asked me, did you ever use a blow dryer to dry your water droplet, your raindrop? And you really can't, because you know especially not right at the beginning, because the speed of the air can whip your puddle right off the drop. So don't want to do that. We're almost there where I can show you. Yeah, let me paint a little bit more here. Okay. Okie dokie. Just gonna keep painting a little bit more here, so we can get some of these layers of rose petals. I don't know how easy it is for you to see the pencil lines from back there. I try to keep them pretty light so only I can see them. Especially where I have a really light pink petal crossing over next to another light pink petal. I don't want a fat old gray pencil line in between the two. You know, I do have watercolor pencils, and I've used them a few times, not enough to be an expert at it at all. But what my first impressions were that if I'm gonna color with a watercolor pencil on dry paper and then come in with a brush and wet it and smooth it around, why not just use watercolor?
No, I was actually thinking about doing a line drawing.
Oh.
Oh,
You know what? I have not done that. Have you?
I have these that I know Carol Syracuse does it all the time.
Huh.
And the pencil artists.
because then you don't end up with any gray pencil marks.
But then they may lose more than you want to lose.
Maybe, or you might have an extra little outliney thing that you don't want. It does, okay, it does, yeah, it's very water soluble. I've never thought of that, but thank you for that idea.
I've used it to sign my name, because I can't do it with a brush, I just can't.
Yeah, yeah, my mom has used watercolor pencil to sign her name, for those of you who didn't hear that. Okay. So I'm going on adding these other little, just trying to get some more petals done here, and I'm waiting for this to be dry enough to show you the next step. Almost. No, don't rush it. Don't rush it. I find that the two challenges of watercolor are how much water, how much paint in any given situation, right? How much water on your brush, how much paint on your brush, how much water on the paper, how much water, how much paint, that ratio, and how wet. The other one is timing, right? Being patient. Some of us have patience of a flea. And I myself included. Okay, so most of this rose has a very light pink underpainting on top of the yellow. So I can actually just go in here, except where it's going to be very, very white, and just put this pale pink, and I'm still using, I'm putting a pale pink underpainting, and then I will come in, I can still see the lines. I put dotted lines for shadows and solid lines for the actual end or beginning of a new petal. And then I can come in and darken the parts I need to darken. So I can pretty much cover this. Where did my scrap go? Going in. Unfortunately, this isn't going to look like much when we have to close up here, because I don't have time to do all of this, but I'll do my best. She put in some really nice layers of petals. Okay, that one needs to be wet first. Oh, by the way, a couple ladies were up here asking me about the PBO masking fluid. Technically, they call it PBO drawing gum. And it also known as liquid frisket. How many names does masking fluid have? Right? Frisket. I don't know why they call it drawing gum. Does anyone? I mean, do people actually use this for drawing? Because I've taught drawing for like 20 years, and I don't know how you would draw over this or around it because it's sticky. So I'm not sure why they call it drawing gum, but this is the PBO drawing gum. Where do I put this? And it's bluish in color. And I think I showed those of you who came to my last demo probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. This is a rubber tipped, and it comes in various sizes and shapes. I get it at cheapjoes.com. They're rubber tipped. They're called Color Shaper, and they're spelled the British way, C-O-L-O-U-R, Shaper, Color Shaper. They come in like a wedge. They come in this like a round tape. This is a soft taper point, and just the number 2 taper point, it's the best applicator for masking fluid because it's rubber and it's got some flexibility. You can kind of just spread it like a brush, and then when you're done, you literally roll it off and crinkle it up and throw it in the garbage. It's great. So again, one of my students found it in Florida at one of her classes. So.
Say what that is again?
It's called a color shaper. It says Royal Sovereign Limited, UK, and it's spelled COLOUR, color shaper. The one I like the best is the number 2 taper point soft, and it's literally a flexible rubber tip.
Do you
And
have to put dishwashing detergent?
nothing. It's rubber. I mean, you literally, you dip it in here. Just dip it in here, and you can put it on your paper. You're not going to be able to see this from back there, but you put it on your paper, the masking fluid, and when you're done, you just go like this, and it dries immediately, and you're done. It's clean. You don't have to protect your brushes or use an old brush or whatever, and it's got a wonderful kind of a tight point to it, so you can get kind of, mini lines. Also, one more thing. If you need super skinny lines, if you have a calligraphy pen with a pointed pen nib, okay? It's made of stainless steel. From Vanna White. Okay. This works like crazy good to make super fine lines. I don't know if you can see how fine that is. Can you get that? Okay. I mean, if you need whiskers or you're doing ship's rigging and you want to be able to put all these in with, the ship's rigging or the whiskers, and then paint a nice dark background next to your kitty and have those whiskers be as pristine as possible. This is the skinniest thing I've ever found to, and I think,
What
one of
size
my,
pen nib is that?
huh?
What size pen nib is that?
It's basically just called a pointed pen nib. I don't know, I can't, if there's any, I don't think there's writing on it, and if there is, I can't read it. Okay. All right, I'm gonna show you, ready? Are you ready for the magic? Watch this. Okay. So here's, I don't know how to show you this. I should keep it right side up to me, correct? Okay. So here's the sun up here, and it's shining onto this leaf. And so that means if this water droplet is 3D and it's risen, it's a raised surface off the leaf, then at the other end of it, it's casting a shadow. So the first thing you do when this is totally dry is you take your same leaf color. So I'm going to grab my phthalo green. And it doesn't need to be hecka dark. It can just be kind of medium. And you're going to, well, it needs to be darker than that. Second. Okay. You're going to come in here with your tiny tweaky brush. That's an art term in my class, tweaky brush. This isn't even pointy enough. I'm going to get a better tweaky brush. Okay, so here is one of the King Art Max rounds. This is a number 0. And the point on this thing, you could probably give yourself an injection with it. Okay. All right, so you come in here with the same color but darker value, and you make a shadow. Already it looks almost 3D, doesn't it? Now watch this. You can take an X-Acto knife, a one-sided razor blade, a utility knife. Let's see what I got in here. Or a paper clip. Something sharp. Take the end of a paper clip. Not that I recommend ruining or ripping into your paper, but this is just so quick and easy. I'm scraping off the paint from my paper, and of course I'm scraping a tiny bit of the paper filament too, but it's the end of the painting, remember? You don't do this till the end of the painting. So nobody's gonna know that you scraped it off. It's gonna look like you, hey, can you see that? Doesn't it look like a jelly bean? Or a water droplet? It's so simple. So if Mike handed out, did anyone not get the little worksheet? Okay, I have more here, so make sure you come up before you leave, or you can get it now. It gives you just, and I don't know, I've had this forever. I think maybe Jody Zeem or Gal Billy gave it to us, and I don't know, I literally had it for 20-something years. I just keep making copies of it. I don't even know what book it came from. And it's so easy. Okay, so I mean, doesn't that look real? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, and of course, they can be very tiny. You can make tiny ones, and but each time you make it, you're going to have the shadow facing the same direction because the light is always coming from that direction, right? Do you see why the darker part is the darker, when we first put that puddle of water on, and I put some paint on it, and I let it settle with gravity down to the end here, that's the light end. And it's when you scratch out that highlight finally that you see this, great contrast, and it looks so reflectant and so wet looking. Isn't that cool? Okay. So, yeah, that's my Merry Christmas. All right. And just to review that, I can make these right here, just for fun, because I'm pretty sure that this particular petal is finished, so I can do the same thing here. I make a shadow at this end. In fact, if your original oval became too long, elongated to look realistic or anything, this is when you can use your shadow to carve it shorter. Did you see some of my water droplets on my roses on the back table?
Yep.
I'm actually a proponent of less is more, so I wouldn't normally put this many on one painting, but because this picture is so obviously right after the rain, it just seemed like this would be a fun time to put a lot of them on. Where's my paper clip? Or anything sharp. Can I put it away? I guess so.
Did you talk about cutting a credit card slanted and get a sharp point. Putting it,
Okay,
or is that too bendable?
it might not be strong enough or stiff enough to actually cut the paper. I mean, the best thing to use is like an X-Acto knife, a utility knife. This isn't coming up as easy as the other one did. Hmm. I might have to work on this a little.
Looks like Santa Claus.
What does? My picture?
Yeah, so far.
Great. When I'm painting the kids face painting and I'm starting a Bengal tiger and I give them white eyebrows and a white goatee, it looks like Santa until I get the black stripes and the orange fur on there. Okay, so. All right, so I hope you had fun learning how to, I should say one way to do a water droplet. There's gotta be other methods, right? Especially if you know exactly where you want them and you can put masking fluid on your highlight and you would still shadow them similarly. I feel like I'm digging for gold here. Okay. Okay, that's coming. All right, now, I mean, they look big and out of place right now, but there's a lot more that has to be done here, right? Okay, let's get the brushes back. All right, let me see if I can build some petals up here a little bit. Let's wet this guy right here. Okay. So when I go into this petal, I'm looking for where's the darkest pink, because right now I have a lot of pink loaded on my brush. So put it where it's darkest first, and then let the water dissipate the color and have it fade out to the edges, like in the picture. And it's going to also have some yellow, more yellow in here than I had. No, it doesn't. I'm looking at the wrong petal. Aren't you glad I'm not perfect?
I sure I like it.
What'd you say?
But it looked nice with the yellow, really.
It did, but that's the other petal. Okay. It's funny. Yeah, I was on the outer petal. Maybe I will add that in there anyway, because there is a bit of a glow there. Mhm. I think my favorite thing about watercolor is watching the colors meld together organically and letting them, because I used to be such a control freak about it that I would be standing guard over them constantly and saying, nope, you've gone too far, nope, nope, nope. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, just see what it does, give it a chance. Today in class, I showed 3 different methods of doing white clouds in a blue sky. And one on dry paper, one on wet paper, and one on sprayed paper. Like sprayed with water droplets. And, some of my students were freaking out, this, oh, I don't like yellow. And then as soon as they get the shadows and the clouds and everything and they hold them up, they're like fabulous. But, you know, they can't stand giving up control. And I get it. Okay, let me see here. What else should I do? Let me see if I can start laying in some darks in here. Okay, this is definitely darker. Here's a pop quiz for you. How do you make the color salmon or peach?
Open it to.
Open a tube, she says. Cheat, cheat. If you don't own a tube of salmon or peach, how do you make salmon or peach?
Yellow and pink,
Good, good.
did I say?
Any pink or rose, because they're not really called pink, they're usually called opera rose, rose madder genuine, permanent rose, and any yellow will make some form of peach or salmon. And they're gorgeous because the yellow glows through. They're gorgeous. Here's another quiz for you. How do you make seafoam green without buying a tube? Okay, this is weird, but it really works. Cerulean blue and sap green. It makes this gorgeous minty seafoam green. Follow me for more recipes. You've seen some of those Facebook things, follow me for more recipes. They're so silly.
I keep waiting to taste them.
Mhm.
Miss Cook.
Mhm. Okay, so see, I want more of a peachy salmon right in here, so I put yellow down first, even more than I had before, and I'm adding some rose. Now, I could make it right on here. There's nothing wrong with mixing up a brand new color on your palette at all. Nothing wrong with that. But I guess the more I'm into this watercolor thing, the more I like watching it happen on the paper because it happens more organically. And it has variation in it, which is what you would normally find in nature. So I like that better. Okay, I'm just going to find my place. Oh, I didn't paint that yet, that's why. Okay, let's do that. I'm surprised at how little I have used my permanent rose so far. I'm mostly using yellow and opera rose. Of course, I haven't gotten to my darkest darks yet either, so I guess that makes sense. Can you put yellow on top of something else to lighten it? Yes. Usually no, it's better to have the yellow underneath, but there are times like right now where this pink right here looks just a little dead to me. It looks flat. So, and it's not a super, super dark pink, but it's on there pretty good.
What is that yellow?
This is Hansa Yellow Light. The brand is, I want to say Core or Daniel Smith. You know, a long time ago when I was a young watercolorist, I bought lemon yellow thinking it would be my brightest color. I bought Winsor Newton lemon yellow. And then as I got more experienced with the opacity of different colors and stuff, I found out that the Winsor lemon yellow, Winsor Newton, is kind of chalky. I think it's kind of opaque. It's milky. It's not, it's still a pretty color, but it's milky. So if you are like me and you know, just got into it and you heard these people talking about how opaque a paint is or how staining or how permanent, and you're like, I can barely remember the name of these things, let alone their characteristics, right? Give yourself time, you'll make friends with, you know, you don't have to know it all at once. There's no way to know it all at once. Somebody that demoed here once said it takes 20 years to learn watercolor and 20 minutes to paint it. Well, I don't agree with the 20 minutes to paint most of my paintings, but it does take a while. It does take some doing to learn how to do this. Okay, so I'm double checking. I'm always checking that I'm getting the glow that I wanted. Sometimes that means pulling back paint that I already put on, possibly adding a little more yellow to get that.
Scrub out,
Do I ever?
scrub, paint out.
Rarely. Usually okay, so I try not to let it get to that point where I have to literally scrub it out. I usually try to catch it before then. And there's different levels of scrubbing out. You all know that, right? One of the least invasive, don't leave your lid off your drawing, your masking fluid. You'll end up with this sticky chunk of, okay. What was I gonna say? So if I do need to lift, my first least invasive way is to make a clean, thirsty brush and lift while it's still damp, right? Okay. If it's dry as a bone, the least invasive way, for instance, these are dry as a bone, is to take a brush and wet, let it sit for a minute and reconstitute, re-liquefy, and then either use your brush to lift or a tissue to lift, right? You can do that. Okay. The next most invasive way, dabbing with a paper towel and as opposed to a damp, clean, thirsty brush is the next invasive way, because when you dab wet paint with a paper towel, you're taking off a lot of paint and moisture all at once. Right? I mean, this is really absorbent because it's a dry, absorbent tissue. The next most invasive way is if you've got a scrubby brush. Do you guys have a scrubby brush? They feel like plastic horsehair. Do you know what I mean? And they come in all sizes, and they actually are called scrubber. And you still need water, and you can scrub stuff up, but you risk marring your paper and taking off some paper filaments, right? And does anyone know the most invasive way to scrub? Well, actually, yeah, you know what? You're right. That would be the most. Scraping off with a razor blade would be the most. There's one in between there then. Mr. Clean Eraser. The Mr. Clean Eraser is as soft as it is, it's really quite abrasive. And when you get this wet and your paper's wet, and you protect the good stuff with a piece of masking tape, and then you rub it, boy, does it come. It takes it right back to the white paper, but you might lose some paper filaments at the same time, but it really works. Okay.
And then the paint does not go back on.
It doesn't go back on nicely because the paper's all kind of funky from being marred. You're right. Yeah, so hopefully that's a last-ditch effort to get something off when you need to. Okay. Let me try to get some darks on here. Oh, we only have 5 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? I did not get very far on this. I apologize. But I probably paint slower than some people, especially when I'm doing petal by petal. I kind of have to. Questions, comments, gifts? Okay, any questions about my paintings over there? Thank you. The hats are my favorite. They were a labor of love.
The next one looks like it should be a splash book.
Oh, that's so sweet. Wow, that's quite the compliment. Goodness. You know what? Let me tell you a watercolorist story. So, those of you who were running the show that year, I think it was a year ago fall, maybe, or maybe a year and a half ago, anyway, and that painting got chosen to be in the show. Not only that, but the board decided that that painting should be the postcard for the show. I was gobsmacked. I mean, I was like, really? Wow, that is quite the honor. And then I went to the show, and to this day, I don't remember who the juror was, and there were like 15 awards given out, and that one didn't win an award. I'm just saying, you never know, because it's so subjective. I was shocked because,
We all were.
yeah, so, and, I mean, thank you to my students, they were all like, no, that's not right, you should have won an award for that one. But anyway, I'm just saying, I had to just say that's part of this, the animal, that's part of the watercolor world. And then what's funny is I painted, did you see my sea lion, my California sea lion? I took that photo at Pier 39 at the wharf in San Francisco. And he was just a little guy in the background, but he just looked so happy, and I blew it up and I, painted him. He won second place at the, what's that place? Pencil in the River, no. What's it called? The one on Webster Street, the gallery there. Somebody. Pencil in the River, right? River what? River Arts. River Arts Gallery. Yeah, second place. First time I ever got money. No, it's not. I've sold a couple others, but I was again really surprised because wow, I mean it was all animals in that show, and there were some beautiful, beautiful animals in that show. Oh, I'm talking a lot. You all made me feel so comfortable. Okay. Anyway, we should probably wrap this up. I hate to say it, but because I know it's getting late.
Do you paint for long periods of time, or do you do a few hours and go back the next day? Or both?
I tend to get in the zone, and next thing I know, it's 5 in the morning. Unless, if I don't have to leave somewhere because they're closing or something, I get in the zone and I can't stop myself. Till I'm bleary-eyed and got a sore neck from leaning over. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm not gonna get near done with the layers that I wanted to, but.
But you did fill your function tonight, which was to show us how you work.
Okay, that's good.
Do you think maybe you can finish it and then maybe it could be uploaded in the watercolor?
Okay.
That would be fun to see the finished.
Yeah, right. I love that when that happens, when somebody posts their finished one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Make sure you get one of these if you didn't, okay? If you want one. And feel free to make copies. I honestly don't even know